night racing was a pretty magical thing.
Who likes a mile-and-a-half racetrack? It was something that just hadn't been done.
If they can pull it off, this is going to be the greatest thing we've done.
There's going to be a night race here at Race 16. If I have to bring out 10 million flashlights.
You could feel the build-up as each segment progressed.
That last lap is seared into my memory.
Now they touch. Erderecht's car spins. It'll be the finish.
The way he hit that wall,
Everything just changed.
One hot night in Charlotte. It certainly gained all the credence it ever needed.
There is no greater natural resource in sports than star athletes. And as NASCAR rose to a national stage in the mid-'80s, it wanted to shine a spotlight on its elite drivers.
baseball and basketball have their All-Star games. Football has its Pro Bowl. And so, ladies and gentlemen, in the spring of 1985, a very select group of Winston Cup drivers are going to get the chance to go racing for $500,000 in the Winston, the race for NASCAR winners.
In 1985, NASCAR and R.J. Reynolds Tobacco debuted the Winston. The All-Star event was a battleground for top drivers to chase the sport's largest cash prize.
The guy that wins this race today is obviously going to make a lot of money, and this is one of the most important races we'll run this year.
There were no points on the line. The only thing that mattered was winning. It was go all out because we want this trophy and we want this money.
For 7 years, the Winston produced thrilling moments, but failed to connect with the fans. The crowd preferred watching their drivers chase championships. As an exhibition, the Winston needed to offer more.
The original concept of the Winston is that the first year would be at Charlotte, and then it would rotate around to various other speedways. It did rotate to Atlanta Motor Speedway. It was 1986, and there weren't 10,000 people there.
The All-Star Race really, to the fans, meant nothing at that time. So it did have a hard time gaining traction.
It was missing the kind of pomp and circumstance that Charlotte Motor Speedway was well known for.
And by 1991, R.J. Reynolds felt like it had kind of run its course, and the Winston no longer served a purpose, and for 1992, had no plans to run it. It was finished. It was dead.
The All-Star Race was on the rocks, but NASCAR was on the rise. Kyle Petty and Davey Allison were part of an infusion of talent and enthusiasm for the start of a new decade.
I had driven for my father for a couple of years, and then he left in the early 80s, and I ran a 7-Eleven car out of Petty Enterprises. And then I went to drive for the Wood Brothers for a few years.
Checkered flag is coming out. Kyle Petty has won it.
And then left the Wood Brothers and didn't have any place to go.
Petty was picked up by a flashy young car owner named Felix Sabates. Their renegade attitude and focus on fun formed one of the most electric race teams of the era.
Kyle's a free spirit. I fell in love with the guy. I mean, how can you not?
Please welcome Kyle Petty.
I'm going to hang a left here, and I'm going to the bathroom, so I'll be back in like 5 minutes.
And the best job that we did with Kyle was with Robbie Pemberton, because they were both young. They knew each other from working at Petty Enterprises.
We sat on a number of poles. We won a few races.
Felix put together a group. We could go to the racetrack and be competitive, week in and week out.
Felix was a great owner. He was very emotional, and he was a great motivator. He found out what it took to motivate people and had fun doing it.
This guys are dedicated to what they do, and we have fun doing it, so that's the important part of it.
The first Rockingham race that we won, I told him if he wins the race, I'll give him a Rolls Royce. Not only he won the race, he kicked everybody's butt.
Kyle was in a position for the first time, and really about the only time in his career, with a team that was good enough that he could win a title.
If there was a time when you could say you were living the dream, the early 90s being with Felix was probably the greatest time for me.
Unlike Petty, Davey Allison preferred the garage to the limelight. He came from a family renowned for tenacity and resilience.
Davey was born with it.
Worked at my dad's shop ever since I was 12 years old up until just this year.
He was so competitive in anything he did.
Davey Allison was really coming into his own as a race car driver in 1991 and 1992. He had so much confidence in Larry McReynolds, in the race cars and the engines, and he was there to win and make his mark, and he knew it was his time.
Coming to the stripe. Morgan comes to the inside, and Davey Allison is going to win the Daytona 500.
Away from the track, Petty and Allison were very different. But like their fathers, it was only a matter of time before they became racing rivals.
I think the great thing about Kyle and Davey was that they were second, or in Kyle's case, third generation drivers. It spoke to the staying power of the sport.
NASCAR had all-star drivers, but it was on the verge of no longer having an all-star event. And that didn't sit right with Charlotte Motor Speedway owner Bruton Smith and track president Humpy Wheeler.
Charlotte Motor Speedway believed the Winston was their race. That racetrack and that staff was so far ahead of everybody else that they knew that nobody could execute it the way that they could.
For Wheeler, the All-Star Race was a jewel in the Speedway's crown. He was determined to keep the event and transform its reputation.
As soon as it left us the first time, I started working on RJR hard.
Since the All-Star event was actually created by R.J. Reynolds, which was why it was called the Winston, they put all of their marketing forces behind it.
But the race had become a losing proposition, and it was unlikely that Wheeler could convince them otherwise.
Every year we'd have to present them with new ideas on what we could do to make the event better.
We put together a plan, and I can remember Humpy and myself going to Winston-Salem to meet with R.J. Reynolds and T. Wayne Robertson, who was kind of the brains behind the Winston. T. Wayne told us, I don't care what you say. I'm giving you the courtesy of a meeting, but I don't care what you say. It's over. We're not going to do it.
RJR said, what are your ideas? What are you going to do? I wanted to have qualifying at the dirt track. I think the other idea was to put a huge roulette wheel in the infield and spin it, and if it landed on odd, we'd reverse the field. Our ideas did not get anywhere. Wayne Robertson said, when are you going to come up with a novel idea? I said, I just gave you 10 of them. He says, well, we didn't like any of them. I just said this right off the I said, how about we run it at night? He looked at me like I'd just fallen off the turnip truck. And he said, how can you do that? You don't have lights. I said, I don't know how, but we're going to.
Runs are at a premium for the Blue Crew. That story.
Humpy Wheeler had delivered a desperate pitch to Winston's T. Wayne Robertson. A radical approach to save the All-Star Race for his speedway.
I said, how about we run it at night? How can you do that? You don't have lights. I said, we will. He said, well, nobody's ever led a super speedway. I said, that don't mean it can't be done. That lit them up. And I could tell, man, they're excited.
Wayne was, if they can pull it off, this is going to be the greatest thing we've done. But we need to pull it off.
So at the same time, I'm thinking to myself now, how in the world are we going to do this in 10 months?
I can remember us leaving the building, walking down the sidewalk, and Humpy says, well, boys, we've got to hurry up and figure out how to light that place. We were the dog that caught the car. It was already the fall, and so we had to go to work.
The idea was ambitious, but night racing had long been a cornerstone of the sports landscape.
Saturday night is stock car racing night all across America.
We all knew that night racing was a pretty magical thing, but the thought of lighting a super speedway was a unique challenge.
Mile-and-a-half speedway, it's 8 times the size of a football stadium.
At that point, the only race we ran under the lights was Bristol in August. They brought in trucks with makeshift lighting just to have enough light to be able to race.
The lights were announced in October of 1991. Hype was important, though tough to believe, with no clear design in place.
We believe that the Winston will be able to run under lights. But again, we want to make sure we can do this in the super speedway arena.
I'm sure there are some doubters. No facility of this size in the world has been lighted for sports competition.
It's going to be a night race right at 16. If I have to bring out 10 million flashlights.
As word of the project spread, the garage was filled with skeptics.
My first reaction was, it's just another Humpy deal. He came up with so many bizarre ideas, so I thought it was a joke.
I think lighting a mile and a half track is going to be a heck of a job for him to do.
Dale Earnhardt immediately complained about it. We're going fast at Charlotte. We could outrun the light. And so I saw Dale and I said, what are you doing? Do you know what the speed of light is? And he looked at me and just shook his head. He was doing a little pro wrestling, just creating headlines.
There were safety concerns about the lighting. Will there be dark spots? Dark spots and shaded spots on the racetrack at a local short track at 85 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour, that's one thing. At 160 or 70 miles an hour, that's totally different.
I thought it was a really stupid idea, and I didn't understand how they could do it.
You can do anything. Put in a lot of poles and a lot of lights and just blast it. But we didn't want you to have a problem where you sit in the grandstand and a car goes down the back straightaway. We didn't want it to go behind a bunch of telephone poles. We wanted to avoid that picket fence effect, that you're looking through a picket fence to see the back straightaway. We brought in some semi-trailers, several hundred yards of them, and put fluorescent shop lights on top of them on the inside of the track to see how that worked, and it didn't. We tried everything, and then we discovered Musco.
Musco Lighting was a small company in Iowa that just happened to have pioneered the science of lighting sports facilities.
I called the athletic director at a number of universities that had put in lights, etc., and they all kept telling me Musco was the best. And Musco had partially lit the Bristol races.
We have our mobile lighting trucks we light football stadiums with, and we were able to light Bristol just like it was a big football stadium.
The concept of lighting a mile-and-a-half track was intimidating.
I said, you guys tell us what to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do now. I just don't want to blind the drivers, and I don't want to have a bunch of poles around the inside of the speedway.
On the plane ride home, we started talking about the idea of maybe there's some way we could actually put the lights down low behind a guardrail and maybe put some shield out over them and that sort of thing.
The problem with those shallow angles of light is you can't control it so that it's not going to blind the drivers. I had a little pocket mirror and I thought, well, maybe I could cut the light off by using this thing. And I had a flashlight actually and shined the flashlight and put it on the wall. And sure enough, it seemed to work.
And he'd gone over to Kmart and bought a couple of mirrors that you put on closet doors. And instead of trying to control the light directly onto the track, he was shining it onto the mirrors and reflecting it back onto the track. I looked at that and thought, wow, that's a neat concept. And so we ended up building about a 50-to-1 scale model.
I couldn't believe what I saw.
The design, called Mirtran, featured hundreds of lights reflecting into mirrors at precise angles. The effect, an even glow across every inch of asphalt.
When we were on the fast track, we didn't get to final designs until January. The race is in May.
They only had a couple of months to fabricate these pieces, run the cabling, install everything. I don't know how it got done so quickly.
A 16, 18-hour day was not an unusual thing.
The amount of equipment was staggering. 2,200 mirrors and 1,200 fixtures, and they all had to be adjusted by hand.
If you sat down and added them all up before you started, you wouldn't do it.
The lights were designed by engineers, but they needed a driver to turn theory into practice. And improbably, Myron Gordon was both.
I've raced pretty much all my life. Started out racing dirt track here in Iowa. Nothing of this kind of speed and not on asphalt.
He said, I want to take you to petty driving school. He wanted to find out what you needed to do from a driver's standpoint.
Humpy got us a car, and we got to use the car for a couple of weeks. We were able to test all the theories that we had of how to make this thing work. drive around the track and see the lighting from the driver's perspective. We were able to solve a lot of the problems before we even had drivers give us the feedback.
Work was completed in early April. The results were illuminating beyond expectation.
The first time it was lit up, I remember sitting there looking at this with my mouth kind of hanging open, and you just knew this was going to be special.
But the toughest critics, the All-Stars, had yet to weigh in. Of awe. Outside the gates, the project was still shrouded in mystery.
At night, they were working on those lights, and I could see those big boxes. What are we going to do with those things? And we didn't know they would turn them on at midnight. So nobody was around to see what they were doing or taking pictures or anything.
It took on a life of its own, and everybody wanted to see it. People that had no interest in the sport, had no knowledge of the sport, suddenly were asking you questions. That was probably the first race that had a theme. We came up with one hot night.
Everybody was talking about the lights. We were going to take full advantage of it the first time.
So we got this idea. There's going to be an open test session in the middle of April. Let's open the gates.
And there was like 38,000 fans showed up just to watch this test.
We had the crowd on hand when it got to dusk. They were going to get them to count down, and Bruton was going to throw these switches. Looked like something out of Frankenstein's lab.
Well, something went wrong.
The theme of the race was one hot night. And he looks at me and he goes, "Don't you think you're taking this one hot night thing a little too far?"
The opening ceremonies fizzled, but fans and media had gathered for a very different show. And it was now time to put Musco's lights through their paces.
We felt like the drivers were not going to be able to see, no matter what kind of lights you put in.
We go to the car and say, "Davey, can you see good?" I see good. They thought the vision was better than the sunlight.
My hat's off to these guys over here at the Speedway. They've done a tremendous job under a lot of pressure, because I know everybody in racing was watching to see what they could do and if they could pull it off.
Their comments were critical to us. It helped us see some things that we otherwise couldn't identify. A couple of them said, "Yeah, I think we got a little glare somewhere in the corner." So then I asked Dale Earnhardt, "You got any problems with glare?" He said, "Yes. Coming out of turn 2, you go to the safety entrance, go back 3 fixtures, the lower left-hand corner of that fixture is causing glare."
He would see things on the racetrack. "Hey guys, there's a motorhome on fire going down the backstretch." He would see things. "There's a fight in the grandstands." When you tell me and that Dale Earnhardt noticed one panel of one light, I totally believe it.
From then on, I kind of depended on him to give us the feedback. I figured it was okay with Dale. It was probably okay.
Well, hopefully we can win it. It being the first night in Winston, it'd be a first, a monumental first. So, I'm ready for it.
The current of energy surged as May 16th approached. 1 year of trials and tension had raced to this one night.
In advance of the race, you could just feel it. There was this aura about this event.
It had so much excitement built up around it. I know we had thousands of people there just from RJ Reynolds.
Oh, people went crazy. Matter of fact, at one time, we were selling more tickets to the All-Star Race than we were to 600.
And an annual rite of spring is underway here, and RV Village is beginning to take shape at CMS.
It's not like football, baseball. It's not like anything else.
It's just racing's in your blood. It gets in your blood, you don't get rid of it.
It's the happening thing. It's a night race, first night race in Charlotte. We got to be there.
You can't get excited when you hear one hot night.
10 months from the pitch that gave the Winston new life, the spotlight descended upon Charlotte and the largest crowd ever for a nighttime sporting event. Nature's house lights dimmed for a show of unprecedented scale.
TNN Motorsports exclusive live coverage of the Winston.
Estimated crowd of 150,000 plus here at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and they're ready for one hot night.
I'm glad we've got these seats right here because there's none available anywhere. It's not only going to be one hot night, this was one hot ticket to get.
That night was one of those really special nights when everybody was on the edge of their seats. It was unbelievable.
This is the place to be.
They are ready. They are ready. It's like a keg of dynamite getting ready to go off.
Davey Allison, who won it all here last year and is looking for 2 in a row.
It sent chills through you because all the fans were just going crazy, and this spectacle that we are part of really made you feel proud.
Everybody walked around. It's like, oh my God, this is incredible. What a feeling.
This is something else. I've been here all day, and, it's just like a big circus as far as I'm concerned. I'm just happen to be one of the clowns that's in it.
We knew it was going to be different. We just didn't know how.
I was sitting in the crowd because I wanted to be able to, if we had any issues, wanted to be able to get to it.
And there was a lot of what ifs, What if the backup system goes off?
If something electrical trips, then everybody says the lights went out. They don't say the electricity went off.
It's hard to really relax, when you're potentially one step away from a disaster.
He knew something special was about to happen. It was almost dangerous, this feeling.
Darkness had been washed away. Daring energy filled the air. And Charlotte Motor Speedway was ready to shine.
In the daytime, when you sit in the grandstands, look at the track, you can see a lot of countryside because the track's so big and there's a lot in your view. And then at night, when the track's lit, the rest of the world goes away, and it's like a Broadway stage.
The Speedway looked great. It never looked better. It's so clean and pretty and crisp. You lose the background of the hills and the trees and the cars and the parking lot and everything. It's just the racetrack that's lit up, and it looks spectacular.
Here they come down for the start of the Winston. Green flag is in the air. Stock Car Racing's All-Star event. It's underway. They stand on the throttle going into the corner.
And it's Davey Allison out quickly with the lead.
All the doubts and anticipation were finally stripped away. All that was left were 20 drivers and 1.5 miles of radiant asphalt.
I like this racing under the lights on a super speedway. I think this looks great. Davey Allison trying to sneak out of the field. He's got a 0.7 of a second lead.
I knew those segments were probably going to be a bit boring because it was just people trying to get in position for the main event.
All segment 1 does really is give you an idea who the contenders might be.
And Davey just took off in that 28.
You take a Yates car with Davey Allison driving, they're going to the front. They're going to be the car to beat. And when they dropped the green flag, they showed they were the car.
Davey Allison has been making a snooze of the lead.
Meanwhile, another contender spent the first segment racing from the back. Kyle Petty showed his endurance over long green flag runs.
Battle for 9th place. Kyle Petty has come up from the 9th row.
We weren't bad, but we weren't good. We weren't where we needed to be.
Checkered flag as Davey Allison coasts to a wire-to-wire win in the first segment of the Winston.
The segment win paid a $50,000 bonus, but the prize came with a price. The fans added some drama of their own.
The fans have voted to invert the cars. Way to go, fans! You took part.
Allison's dominance worked against him, and for the first time all night, he would have to fight through traffic.
The fans have voted to put you in the back of the field. How you feel about that?
We'll just have to see what we can do with the traffic now.
We're not going to try to out-trick ourselves. We're going to try to lead every lap we can and run as hard as we can and see where the cards fall.
They weren't a layup team at all. They're going to win. They're going to go to the back. They're going to try to win again. That's the way they did things.
Kyle Petty used the 10-minute break to improve the handling of his car. With the added help of flipping the field, 42 was ready to make a push to the front.
We came in and made our adjustment When we went out for the second segment, we were good.
Field is under green. Jeff Bodine is the leader as they get the green flag.
But Petty wasn't the only contender positioning for the final 10-lap segment.
Earnhardt now moves up to the outside of Labonte. He'll grab 5th.
Can anyone beat Earnhardt? That was always the question going into the All-Star race.
On Earnhardt, you never know. When he digs deep, he finds stuff that nobody else can.
And Earnhardt is flying. He has caught Richard Petty, having been 5-6 car lengths back just a lap ago. Earnhardt tracks the leaders.
I hope all these new lights are screwed on tight because this place is going to start shaking wildly.
Earnhardt for second place. Kyle Petty goes right along with him. Ooh, they get together. And Earnhardt almost got up into the wall.
And these fans are going absolutely crazy here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, watching one of the best Winstons we've seen in a long, long time.
Kyle Petty to the lead. What'd you do to the car to make it better?
We just made a spring adjustment in the right rear and knocked some spoiler out of it. I hope it works out for everybody.
Boy, I tell you, Kyle Petty checked in.
The man who won the first segment, Davey Allison, is running 14th.
Trying to work his way back up to the front of the pack, having a lot of trouble getting through traffic.
The approach with the team was, let's get every spot we can and get ourselves in good position for this last 10 laps. It was tougher going than we imagined.
The man on the move, Davey Allison, would be moving up from 7th to 6th right here.
The 28 was back in contention. And while Petty ran away with segment 2, Allison and Earnhardt were positioned to compete for the big money in the final 10-lap shootout.
Kyle Petty is about as strong as I've seen a car, but once they complete the second 30-lap segment, it's going to pull everybody right back up to the front for a shootout to the finish.
The checkered flag is out. Kyle Petty, $50,000 richer.
We just had a 10-lap race with nothing before it. The guys want to be able to adjust their cars. And I wanted the cars to be as perfect as they could be for that last 10-lap shootout.
The warm-up act was over. The main event about to begin. 10 laps that would reshape the future of racing. The first 2 legs of the Winston were runaway victories. And while the lights were a welcome attraction, the fans paid to see their heroes shine in close combat. A final battle to decide the legacy of one hot night.
10 laps, folks. $200,000 is on the line. Kyle Petty's on the pole. Ernie Irvan is right alongside. Dale Earnhardt and Kenny Schrader. Elliott, Allison, Kulwicki, Waltrip, and on back.
Everything was focused on the 10-lap shootout. All of the rest was just warm-up act.
You could feel the build-up in the grandstands as each segment progressed. It was that final 10-lap segment that everybody was waiting on.
Boy, I tell you, Felix must have made Kyle Petty a big money on.
What's Kyle get from Felix if he wins?
I guess we're going to run next week, too.
I went to Coke and I said, hey, if we win the first race on the lights in Charlotte, I get $1 million for the race team, and Kyle gets $1 million for himself.
The bonus for me was he would buy lakefront lot on Lake Norman for me, and so that was my extra incentive.
You could see that they were going to make some real fireworks. They were just setting it up.
Green flag, 10 laps.
They dropped the flag on the 10-lap race. There's no strategy. Your goal is to win. That's all. You got 10 laps in 5 minutes, and that's what it boils down to.
So look at Kyle Petty pulling away.
You kind of know who your competition's going to be based on other tracks similar to that. So I didn't really factor in that the 42 car was going to be a player, but it didn't take me long to realize that they weren't.
It was 10 laps. We figured we had it going on. We knew there was guys behind us that were capable, but we had track position, we had a short run. We were getting ready to cash the check.
These dogs can fight for the scraps, and that's all that's left. Or Waltrip in the grab.
They put the caution flag out. That's going to put it back on Kyle.
Kyle Petty had checked out by about 1.2 seconds.
Never did I ever think, nah, they shouldn't have thrown that. An all-star race is not about somebody lapping the field. You have to put on a show for the fans. So a caution should have been thrown to bunch us back up and to give the fans what they came for.
6 laps to go.
The caution brought Earnhardt and Allison back to Petty's bumper. If they had anything left for the 42, it was time to show it off.
That's the moment of the night that everybody who had been there for the last 4 or 5 hours was anticipating.
Here they come. Green flag. The front row pulls away, but this time Kyle cannot dispose of Dale Earnhardt.
Earnhardt is there in the outside lane going into turn number 1. Here's Kyle right on the bottom of the track, and Earnhardt slips around the outside lane. Dale Earnhardt goes in front. Here's Davey Allison.
You better watch this 28. I'm telling you, that car is accelerating.
Kyle Petty's got to be wondering what in the world happened on that restart. All of a sudden, he goes from leading the race to third.
The way our car had worked, it just took a couple of laps to get the tires up to where they needed to be. I just couldn't go on a restart like those guys could go. Both of them ended up in front of me, and you had to fight your way back through it. We were really good through 1 and 2. I go to the bottom of the racetrack and could get back to the gas really early and got a huge run coming off turn 2.
It looked like to me, probably Dale Earnhardt was going to win that race. And probably Kyle was going to run second. We were probably going to run third.
I'll tell you one thing. You see that 3 car out there? That's one of the toughest cars in the world to beat in this kind of racing.
Dale ran every race like it paid $1 million to win. So you knew when you raced him, you had to race really hard to get around him.
And up front, Earnhardt and Kyle Petty are separated now by only 2 car lengths. 2 to go. Davey Allison shuffled back a bit, but he's gaining.
This is only right Saturday night racing. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's going to come down to the last lap.
We didn't have these mammoth pit boxes back then where you were sitting 2 stories up in the air. You pretty much could stand on pit road, and that's as high as you could get. I remember they came off 4 with the white flag waving.
Kyle Petty is just a car length back of Earnhardt. 1 lap to go.
So they take the white flag. I watch them go off into 1, and I knew in my mind they should be probably on the back stretch. And all of a sudden, the crowd was losing their flipping mind. I wonder what the hell's going on back there.
When they came out of the second turn, you could hear the cheers of the crowd over the cars.
Kyle pulls down to the bottom. Earnhardt runs him all the way to the bottom of the back straightaway.
Earnhardt did what he needed to do. He run us down there. Kyle did what he needed to do. He didn't lift. All bets were off on what was going to happen.
Now they touch. Earnhardt's car spins in turn number 3. Kyle Petty goes by as Earnhardt spins up to the outside of the track.
I eased up, and as I eased up, Dale went on in the corner, but then when he tried to turn, then he wrecks.
Kyle Petty coming to the checkered flag. Here comes Davey Allison.
I look back toward turn 4. Here comes the 28 and the 42 side by side. Well, where's the 3 car?
I mean, we were cross our fingers, cross our legs. So I was doing this like, please.
Here comes Davey Allison to the bottom.
Davey Allison on the inside of Kyle Petty. They touch here at the stripe. Allison wins. Davey Allison wins the Winston, but pays a huge price.
It was like watching a foot race, and everybody's running for the tape. And as soon as you hit the tape, you see runners fall down and relax because that's where they're at. And we just got together.
We won, but then it went bad.
I mean, we've had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows.
Game 1, not a...
Davey Allison wins the Winston, but pays a huge price as the car crashes into the outside retaining wall.
In the heat of battle, anything can happen. And tonight, everything happened.
We won, but then it went bad.
I called Nari Baird, who's the chief emergency guy for us. So I said, Nari, how is it? And he said, I don't know. He says he's unconscious, and that scared me to death.
when they reported back that he was unconscious, everything just changed.
The whole night had been such a great success and showed such promise. And to end it with a star driver, the winning driver, unconscious, was unthinkable.
We're back at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Davey Allison has been helped from his car. And rather than victory lane, he's going to be transported over to the infield care center.
The way he hit that wall and how hard he hit that wall, that was a heck of a lick.
We didn't have a lot of anything between our helmet and the wall. And he hit his head on the wall. Cut the roof off the car and pulled him out, took him to the hospital.
Bobby Allison and I got in the ambulance with Davey. And Davey had come to. He must have asked 10 times what happened. I said, well, pal, you won the race, but you wrecked. And he went, no way. And he'd go, what happened again now? I said, well, you won the race, but you wrecked. Wow. So what happened?
As Davey Allison arrived at the infield care center, attention shifted to the garage, where chaos of a different kind was brewing.
I think Kyle and Dale are going to it in the pits.
Oh, you're right. Big deal at the Union Station.
When it was over with, you know, we went to the gas pumps after the race with Earnhardt. We all pulled in there, and everybody was gathered around and thought there was going to be this huge brawl that was going to break out. Kyle got out of his car. Big E got out of his, and their pit crew and our pit crew all went up together.
I was quite surprised when I got to the pumps and found Earnhardt laughing.
We disappointed people because Kyle and Earnhardt were high-fiving, and what a great race.
He went in the corner and tried to take what was his. That's all it was, racing. Yeah.
Racers use that stupid saying, it's just racing. But everything that happened that night was just racing.
At the end of the night, if you're a racer and you love this stuff and you understand this stuff, yeah, it was like, man, I hate it, but dang it, you know, I would have done the same thing that guy did, you know.
Are those the rules of the Winston?
I don't know about the rules. As racing, he was trying to win. I was too.
Tonight, on the flatbed, Davey Allison's car is going to victory lane.
For the first time in the history of NASCAR, and I hope the last time, the driver didn't show up at the winner's circle. His wrecked car did.
And I see a wrecker with a car on it backing up into victory lane.
You're seeing exactly what I'm seeing. They're unloading that beaten, battered Ford Thunderbird up here in victory lane.
No, I don't like wrecks. I hate wrecks. I jumped on the wrecker and I asked the guy to stop. And he says, they told me to, and he started backing again, and I hit the side of his wrecker with my fist. I mean, I know put a big dent in it. The next one's gonna be in your head. You're not taking this car in there.
What Robert finally agreed to do is, you know what? We'll get a few team members, we'll take some pictures. If you look at the victory lane photos from the 92 All-Star Race, I think it's Robert, Carolyn Yates, some people with R.J. Reynolds, maybe a few crew members. Nobody's really smiling, and rightly so.
Here's your winning car owners, your winning crew chief, engine builder, crew, all there getting ready to celebrate what? Not knowing how their driver was?
First of all, we want to know, is Davey okay?
Yeah, Davey's okay. It did knock him out, you know, momentarily, but he says he's fine. He won the race. He, you know, gave a big thumbs up when we told him he won.
Allison was flown to the hospital, suffering from a concussion and a bruised lung.
Eyes are already bloodshot. He has no shirt on, and there's a big bruise. It looked like he had just been hit by a whip across his shoulder blade. He was pretty busted up, and he looked up. I said, well, I have good news and bad news. The good news is you won about $300,000 tonight. And I said, the bad news is your doctor's bill is going to be about $400,000. And he started laughing. He's like, stop, that pisses me off. Don't make me laugh. My ribs hurt.
called Sunday night at the condo, and he was pretty shook up about it, and he kept apologizing, and I told him I didn't have any hard feelings from my end. You know, I didn't see anything that he did that was out of line or that any other Winston Cup driver, including myself, would have done.
One hot night illuminated more than just a racetrack. It was a spotlight on the power of bold ideas and uncommon courage.
We had figured out a way to light racetracks that nobody else had ever done. This is going to have an impression for a long time to come.
We had drama. We had excitement. We were under the lights. I think it was huge.
When you see Davey Allison and Dale Earnhardt Sr. run that hard for this race means something to them. It gave it some credibility all of a sudden to the fans. It wasn't just a promotional race. It became the All-Star Race.
We were seeing the future of NASCAR that night.
It really is one of the great moments in all of sport history.
The All-Star Race was reborn.
Wow, that's big, you know.
We didn't come here to run third. We come here to take all the money.
Here comes his brother Kyle to the inside and wrecked it.
Somebody better keep me away from sending him one after this race.
They're going to get back tonight. Woo! Yes!
Night racing not only saved the All-Star Race, it put motorsports on a primetime stage. Decades later, one night still shines.
It certainly gained all the credence it ever needed here tonight. One hot night in Charlotte.
Did it live up to the promise of the pre-race and all of the hype that R.J. Reynolds and NASCAR put into it? Absolutely.
Coming to the checkered flag. Here comes Davey Allison to the bottom. It'll be the finish everybody was waiting for. And Davey Allison is in a shower of sparks.
Was it one hot night? You bet.